Come on in, pull up a chair. Let's talk business on For Your Company's Benefit. We meet you here on the first and third Tuesday each month at 12:30 Central. For Your Company's Benefit is sponsored by Insure You Too. Now, here's your host, Michael Battaglia.
All right, well, welcome to For Your Company's Benefit. This is our Season 1, Episode 1. Our first guest on the whole show, Mr. Joe Lucas. I appreciate you coming out and talking with us today. Joe is involved with credit heavily. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. With Joe, I met at a company that called SRS. When Joe came in, I met them. They were doing about $400 million at that point. And when he moved on, they were doing about $1.9 million. So he was part of the team that helped grow that. They had 25 branches in 15 states, and at the end they had about 250 branches in 44 states. So a lot of part of the company is having to manage that credit and that they were giving out. And so that's the type of stuff we're going to talk to. Joe's background is he's got a BS in economics from San Francisco State and an MBA in finance from JFK. He's been in the credit for 25 years, working for mid-size all the way up to global companies. So Joe, I appreciate it and welcome today.
Thank you for having me.
I agree. So let's just start off. What's kind of the basics of credit? What do companies look for? Why do they, have a credit? What's it all about?
Well, let's first start off with what are the three C's of credit,
Okay.
which are capital, capacity, and character. And those are the things that you look for before you extend credit to somebody.
Okay.
So capacity is the ability to repay you. Capital is the working capital of the company. But the most primary one is character, the character of the person that you're extending credit to. Credit is a very personal thing, but even though it's in business, people can react very negatively when you tell them they can't have credit. So it's a very sensitive function. It's either the first or second largest asset of any company. So you've got inventory, work, and then receivables. And if you don't turn those receivables, it'll affect the cash flow of your company. So when you go to evaluate credit, you've got to look at certain things. Again, it's the capital, capacity, and character, and you get that from their past history, and also with regards to their ability to repayment. You might get some financial information from them, or you can look at how they've paid other people in the past. All this is part of extending that line of credit. You as a credit person, your job is to protect the assets of the company, but it's also your job is to facilitate sales through the issuance of credit. I remember walking through a company and one of the collectors was complaining about this, poor customer. And I said, look, if they didn't have any bad customers, there'd be nothing for us to do. So if everybody paid on time, there's no job for credit people. But credit people really are the gatekeepers. They're the rule enforcers. If you extend credit to somebody, you give them 30 days to pay you, and they don't pay you 60, 90, or 120 days, you're financing their company. So you're also like a banker to them.
Yeah, a lot of times we've spoken, I always felt like when I was talking to you, I was talking more about a banker than I was a company. And I don't think a lot of people think about it as a bank, but you're loaning somebody for 30 days or 60 days, and you've paid it up front, and it's a loan, and you're kind of banking rules. If you're not managing it, it seems like that's just going to affect you a whole lot.
More companies go out of business for the fact that they lose their working capital ability. That they cannot finance their own growth. A healthy working capital is very important for the continuation and survival of your own organization. So you start off with, when you're looking at credit, you start off with looking at the people that you're dealing with, their ability to repay you, and the time frame they can pay you in. And then also the next thing you've got to look at from a credit department, again, not only which is your mission statement of making sure you're protecting the assets but facilitating sales, but you have to look at your terms and conditions on your contract, the credit application. That is the tool. That's what you and the other person are agreed to on how you're going to repay it. So if you give them 120-day terms, you can't expect to be paid in 30. If you give them 30-day terms, you shouldn't be paid in 120-day terms. So all those things, warranties, force majeurs, any type of problems that arise, all should be stated in the terms and conditions of that credit application.
Oh, okay. So the guy comes in, he wants to buy widgets from me. I set him up on 30-day terms. And a lot of companies, I think, probably just go, I need a customer on 30-day terms. What are the types of things, the tools and stuff that you use when you look at, you say that the credibility of that person is one of your C's. What are the types of things that you go and look at for that?
Well, you look at his past history on how he's repaid you, how he's repaid other people. You could start off a customer. You have a guy that's brand new in business. You don't want to extend him terms right away, but you might give him COD terms. You might give him 7-day terms. And say, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll give you terms for 7 days. See how you pay that, and if you do that, and you can build up, then they can build up a reputation with you and credit with you. If they have no business, if they're a brand new business. If they're an established business, they already have other trade suppliers. That way, you go out and you look and see how they pay those people. There's a bunch of reports you can get. You can get Experian, DNB, and then of course your trade credit groups owned by the National Association of Credit Managers. They've got a trade report which reports on how these people pay other people. So you can see, hey, everybody's giving them 30 days, but they pay everybody at 90. You know, going in, that you're going to get paid at 90 days. And if you don't want that, then you have to establish that up front.
Right.
If not, they're going to pay you at 90 days. Large companies right now are doing a lot of that. They're saying, hey, our terms are 90 days. If you want the business, you got to accept 90 days or 60 days.
So the people if they're big enough, they're putting conditions on on the seller to
Sure.
say, we're going to give you 90 days. So you got to be able to handle that in your
and in your cash flow.
and otherwise you've got no working capital quickly. And I think a lot of companies miss that. A lot of times they're not looking at it. What about different industries?
Look at small companies.
Yeah.
One that we know very, very closely.
Mm-hmm.
Their biggest issue is working capital.
Right.
They don't have any working capital. They've used it all up, and now they've eaten up all the receivables. So now they're just going one day to the next.
It's hard to dig out of a hole like that.
Yeah.
Because once you're down there, unless you get an investor, you get somebody to bring money in, and it's all managing that credit.
It's all managing your money.
Your money.
Yeah, because it's your money.
Right.
You've exchanged labors and good, either labor and material, for a receivable, and now you've got to get that receivable in to replenish it. I used to tell customers all the time when they would complain that, why are you beating me up? I said, look, you've asked us for depth and breadth of inventory. You ask us for on-time delivery. You ask us to represent you in the marketplace with, giving you product knowledge. You ask us to give you terms. All we ask is two things in return. One, support us by buying from us, and two, pay us as agreed. So it's not that we don't want to give them the credit. We want to establish credit with people, but the thing is, you've got to figure out in your own business, can you survive long enough to wait for that funds to come back?
There's always going to be somebody who's going to pay you. You're always going to have some bad debt, right?
Right.
What do you use to manage that, or to understand that, or how do you plan that, or like what percentages? I mean, what's good, bad? What
It depends the industry. Yeah, I know somebody in the medical industry that their profits are so high, their medical equipment industry, that they're sole sourced. If they take a hit, it's not that big a deal because they got 70% profit in it. If you're in a distribution industry that with much tighter margins, that's very expensive to you. So it depends on the industry. At most distributors which I've worked for, 2 to 3%. I mean, 0.2 to 0.3% is what's expected.
Okay.
Right, and then you take it. You can just do an inverse fraction. If you're 2% return on sales and you lose $1,000, what's it cost you to get that back? And that's $5,000 worth of sales. So it's you just look at it mathematically and say, okay, what can we afford?
I see. Interesting. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of where you're gonna go. You got to get another $5,000 in sales, and that's just to make up for that. So managing that then is really how and when you extend credit. You can get looser on it. You're going to get more bad debt. You're going to get tighter. You're going to get less bad debt.
That's correct. It's sitting on a razor blade. Either way you move, you get cut. If you're too loose, then you have the CFO yelling at you. You're giving away too much profits. If you're too tight, you got sales yelling at you saying that you're restricting sales.
And that's kind of your balancing act. You're
at all times, sitting on a pin.
Interesting. So what tools do you use in we talked a little about establishing, right? So in your credit reports, that type of stuff, but also in your collections and that. Tell me a little bit about how some of that works.
Okay, so what you first start off with is you start with your credit app. Okay, and on that credit app you should have 3 trades, a bank reference, things along those lines. You obtain that data, that knowledge, then you make a credit line. Then if all of a sudden the customer's already exceeded his credit line, you've got to reevaluate it. Didn't give him enough credit? Do you want to call him up and say, hey, I need some funds back? So there's a number of ways to look at credit, and a number of ways to have credit tools for your collection side. 1 is the establishment of the credit limit. 2 is the establishment of the terms, and 3 is if he's doing everything right, stays within credit limit, pays within terms, you really don't need a credit department for that customer. It's the ones that fall out. It's the exception customers. It's the ones that don't pay on time, continually exceed their credit limit. Those are the ones you've got to reevaluate. So you have what's called an aging, which has got your current 30, 60, 90, 120-day customer aging of the invoices. You look at those, and then you prioritize. Who is the customer? And this has to do with customer ranking also. You rank your customers. Do I have a problem with this customer? Is this not a well-established customer? If it's a customer that's been with you 10 years, always pays on time, you really don't even want to look at that guy because money's going to come in. But if you got a guy that's marginal, or if you got a guy that it's high risk, those are the ones you put a tighter leash on. And when you see things happening on the aging, you either want to call them or contact sales or find out what's going on with that guy.
Okay.
Then collection calls it's still a human business. You have to pick up the phone call and make a phone call and talk to somebody. It can't all be emails. It can't be text. It still is pick up the phone, give a call. Now, if you've got a marginal customer that you're looking at, and you can make what's called a courtesy call, which is it's 10 days before the invoice is due. You might want to call them up and just say, "Hi, my name's Joe. I'm just calling to make sure you have the invoice, you have the proof of delivery, and there's no issues." That way, when it comes time to 30 days, they can't. When you go to call them when it's past due at 45, say, "Hey, we're missing the invoice." So if you make a nice courtesy call ahead of time, that takes away the objection of not being able to pay you.
Okay. So I'm a small company. I can't hire a credit manager, right? What are the steps I can do to maybe help me as I go through that in a smaller company? Is there outside help? Somebody who can help me watch it? Is there other things that if I get in trouble can help me with?
When you get in trouble, that's a collection agency. That's when you want to turn it over to, and knowing when to turn over an account, it's a personal preference, but because a lot of credit people go, well, I extended the credit, so I'm going to collect it. A lot of it's just knowing when to turn it over. The guy's 60 days past due, I probably wouldn't turn the account over. The guy's 120 days past due, I can't get a hold of them, they won't talk to me. Then I might have to think about giving it to a collection agency. But that interim step between the time you've issued it and the time that you're worried about it, there's no service that I know of that can come into a small company and say, hey, except for you just hire a temp person. The problem with a temp person, they're not invested, so they can damage your relationship. So you need somebody who, if it's a small company that's got salespeople, I'd turn it over to my salespeople and say, hey, go see what's going on.
They're interested in that relationship.
They're in the relationship.
Because you got to keep the relationship with the client.
Yep.
Even if they're not paying, if you can get them through that hump or whatever else, they may become a large client.
Maybe a great customer. Yeah, there's customers that I've had in the past that had problems that I've worked with that become continued on to be fantastic customers for the company. There's other ones. The easiest thing for a credit guy to do is make a decision. I'm placing it for collection. Now you've broken the relationship. There is no more relationship. It's now going to go, either collection agency is going to take care of it, or they're going to go legal, or it's going to be a suit, things along those lines.
Oh, okay. So really, then obviously your collection agency is your last resort because you've lost the customer at that point.
Lost the customer, yeah. Yep, you're going to lose.
What do they? How do collection agencies work? I mean, obviously they make money. What if they don't collect? You pay people by the hour. How do collection agencies work?
Both ways. There's some that are on a contingency basis, and I'd suggest everybody use a contingency-based attorney and a contingency-based collection agency. So you turn it over to a collection agency. They try. Sometimes a third party just can settle it. sometimes it's a different voice. They know you're serious at this point in time. It's been placed for collections. You've breached the relationship. They just want your money and get on. Then they take a percentage of that of what they collect. An hourly guy is an hourly attorney. You turn it over to an hourly attorney. The problem with that is they've got no incentive really to close it because they're billing you hourly, right?
Oh, okay, so they bill you outside of what they collect.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's just but that's why I always suggest that you get a contingency-based attorney and a contingency-based collection agency. And I believe the industry standard is about 45% recovery rate, and the ones I've used have gone as high as 75% recovery rate.
That's not a very high recovery. I mean, 75 is, but you're 30-40%.
Yeah, no, and that's you've already tried collecting it, you've turned it over. This is a marginal customer that
What about factoring, receivables factoring? You see people trying to do this all the time. What are kind of the pluses and minuses of that?
The pluses and minuses of it is very expensive, so that's a minus of it. Plus is you get your cash right away. But factoring used to be very big in the apparel industry, and that's really kind of gone by the wayside. There's no more major factors anymore.
Okay.
So, but yeah, if you want to take your AR and sell it, well, that's what you're doing. You're selling it.
So they buy it a percentage of what they think they're going to collect, and plus some profit for themselves, and then they take the responsibility
to collect the AR. The problem is it's expensive.
What does your customer see in a case like that? Are they sending the check to you and you give it to or both?
It can be either way. You can have there's companies out there that do factoring, but basically they're for small companies that don't have a collection don't have a credit department. But I've seen it where they find out they're being factored and they lose the customers because you're not financially stable.
Right, because if you're not doing this, you're trying to increase your cash flow. You're not trying to...
Right, and they're very worried about continuing business that way.
Okay. What types of changes do you see going on in that industry? Things coming up?
I believe our AI is going to affect both the credit granting and the collection process. Okay. I think it'll be automated where the credit granting, it already is now. You can put a scoring model in, score the customer, and then give it a credit line there. But I think the next step is going to be on the automation of basically emails to customers looking for collections. That'll be the next step before it gets to a real person.
Oh, so it's just going to be just a handoff, and my systems are going to deal with it. It sees that they're 30 days late, comes out the first letter.
Fire out an email.
And you think those systems become intelligent where they're going to be more than just a form letter? Or, I mean...
No, I think it's going to be customized. I think it's going to be able to be customized to where the email says, hi, Mike, this is Joe from ABC Company. I noticed that you're 30 days past due. Please give me a call, and then have that set up. I think to be able to be customized and be able to just shoot right on through. People won't even know they're the collectors, because everybody's trying to do less, do more with less.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of the robots out there. It's funny, today I was chatting with a person I was hiring to do some work for me, and I actually on the chat window, because I called him, I couldn't get through. I was going to email him. I said, they got a little chat window, so I typed in that. And I actually asked him in the middle of the conversation, are you a robot or a real person? Because it's getting to the point where, we'll call up two phones and we'll connect two robots together and let them chat with each other, because it's getting harder to tell nowadays. And
yeah, I've seen it. So I know it. I know it, the AI is coming to the collection side of it.
Yeah, it's kind of coming everywhere, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. Very good. What's the best piece of advice you could give somebody who is starting to give out credit or is struggling with people they give out credit to?
Starting to give out credit, make sure you have a credit application in process. Make sure it's got everything that you want. A key one is make sure where it's going to be sued is going to be you're going to be suing it. If you have to go to the legal route, where the lawsuit's going to be. Also, make sure you cover all collection and attorney's fees in that credit application. Location, collection, credit fees, and then whatever warranties, etc., that you need, in the rest of the terms and conditions. But those key ones are the where it's going to be sued, interest, and collection fees. Because once you get those in there, the bill can run up fairly well.
When you're doing that, sometimes you're going to want a personal guarantee. Kind of what's the times you look for a personal guarantee in a company don't? I mean, if you were selling to 3M, they're not going to get a personal guarantee. So kind of how do you draw that line on like a personal guarantee?
You actually hit it right on the head. If you're looking for somebody, if you're dealing with small people, like at SRS, we were dealing with a lot of small roofers.
Right.
We got a lot of personal guarantees. When I was with Wiley Systems and Bell, we were dealing with large corporations. We're not going to get personal guarantees. Personal guarantee basically says, if the corporation doesn't pay, I will personally pay you. So you understand what a personal guarantee function is. Because a corporation's an entity, and then if it's a brand new corporation or it's a year old, you might want to look at them and say, if you personally guarantee this, then we'll go ahead. And again, you've got to look at their ability. Do they have assets? Do they pay their own personal bills on time? So you have to walk through that whole credit criteria always. But at the same time, when you're looking for a PG, you're just making sure that somebody's got some ability to pay you. You asked the second question, which is collection agencies and attorneys. Those are the ones I would look to if I was a small business and cannot get my money paid. But in reality, I think the best bet is to have that relationship with the customer. That's the key to all of it.
So solve it up front before you get there.
And make sure they have character. I've chased more guys, they've got money, but don't have the character to pay you. It's the largest part of that 3 C's. They're really 5 C's, but I always go back to the old school. And the largest part of that's character. You can have an attorney that's got all the money, all the ability, but he just doesn't have the character to pay you. And I'm not picking on attorneys. That popped in my head. I've chased doctors. I've chased big corporations that just don't have the character.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today and give us an idea how the credit department worked. Is any final parting words or thoughts that we didn't maybe cover?
If the cash register ring, the sale isn't done.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I appreciate it. Hope you all can join us at our next episode. We'll be talking to Greg Tompkins. He's a friend of mine out of New Jersey. He's a fractional CFO, and we'll be talking about what that world is and what fractional CFOs can do for you. So I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you much.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We look forward to seeing you next time. Remember, we meet here on the first and third Tuesday each month at 12:30 Central. For Michael Battaglia and all of us here at For Your Company's Benefit, we wish you good business until we meet again.